Story 1. Hey there. I'm Emma, and I'm only 26 years old. Can you believe it? 3 years ago, I tied the knot with the most stunning guy on the planet. Ethan, he's a total sweetheart, always making me feel like the luckiest girl alive. But hold on to your hats, folks, because here's the jaw dropper. My mother-in-law Evelyn is like the Wicked Witch of the West. When it comes to me, she's been gunning for me since day one, and trust me, it's a roller coaster you won't want to miss. I totally get it. I mean, who wouldn't want to protect their precious baby boy, right? But brace yourself for this shocker. Sometimes, I think my mother-in-law Evelyn takes it to a whole new level. She's not just protecting her son, she's like the queen of subtle, innocent-seeming manipulations. She'll pull off these tiny, seemingly harmless acts that drive you up the wall, all while making you look like the crazy one. It's like she's got a master plan to mess with your mind. We've all encountered someone like that in our lives, haven't we? Well, buckle up because I have to deal with this person on a regular basis. She's my mother-in-law. But here's the kicker. I was raised completely differently. I'm the kind of person who doesn't shy away from calling out nonsense, and trust me, I don't hold back. It's probably why Ethan fell head over heels for my personality, because he's the quiet, soft-spoken type. We're like yin and yang, folks. You know what they say? Opposites attract. And boy, do they ever. I've dabbled in a bit of psychology myself, and trust me, I can spot those bad intentions from a mile away. It's like our strong personalities are like magnets, just drawing us into a clash. And speaking of clashes, let me take you back to the first time I met her. Evelyn looked me straight in the eye and dropped this bombshell. Emma, don't you think it's high time you cut back on all that eating? Can you believe it? Picture this. We're all sitting at the restaurant table, and the tension in the air is so thick you could cut it with a knife. I'm sitting there, completely mortified, and my face is probably as pale as a ghost. It's just me, Ethan, my boyfriend at the time, George, my future father-in-law, and Evelyn at the table. George looks like he's been struck speechless, and bows his head almost as if he's trying to share in my embarrassment. It was one of those moments you just wish you could disappear. Ethan was also feeling embarrassed, but he was also angry at his mother for saying that he aptly berid her. Really, Mom? That is such an awful thing to say. She could eat as much as she wants to. Oh no, sweetie. I didn't mean any harm. I just wanted to look out for you. You know, I've noticed that you've been gaining a lot of weight. Ethan has been showing me your photos from when you were younger, and you look so much better than not like now. But I don't mean to be offensive, sweetheart. I'm just trying to give you some advice. I tried my best to remain calm, as I didn't want to cause a scene, but my embarrassment quickly started to turn into irritation nonetheless, because this was my first time meeting the family, and I wanted to make a lasting impression, because I absolutely adored Ethan. For the first time in a long time, I held my tongue. I just smiled at her politely and thanked her for the unsolicited advice. Situations like that grew in frequency and strength as we got to know each other more. I genuinely believed that the taunting would stop at some point after she had determined that I was good for her son, but it only appeared to be getting worse. I was beginning to get along fine with my father-in-law George, who is the sweetest man on earth. I see where Ethan gets it from, as much as I was growing closer and closer to everyone else in Ethan's family. Evelyn appeared to be the only one who disliked me, and for no apparent reason as well. I was even introduced to Ryan, Ethan's childhood friend. These two had practically grown up together, and George and Evelyn treated Ryan like a second son. Now don't get me wrong, Ethan was all in with our relationship, and it seemed like his entire family, including his extended family, and Ryan had welcomed me with open arms. It was like I had become a part of their close-knit circle, but guess who decided to be the exception? Yep, you guessed it. Evelyn had her own special issues with me. I'm so grateful for the love and support I managed to identify from the vast and overwhelming majority of Ethan's family. I received this love and support up until my wedding day, where my mother-in-law, of course, tried to do something conniving to get me to look bad on my special day. She made it a point to be as bothersome and as ridiculous as she could be. Honestly, she was acting like a bridezilla. No, her hair is supposed to be in an updo, just like how I did on my wedding day. I appreciate the help, Evelyn, but I want my hair to look like this. I don't think so. You look so ugly. The bridal party gasped, but unfortunately, I was used to this, so it wasn't surprising she quickly tried to rectify her mistake. Oh no, darling, no. I just mean that you can look so much better than you do now, and I would just like to say that I see a lot of myself in Emma. She is such a bright young woman, and even though I look much better than she did at her age, I would like to say that she is beautiful in her way. Although my father-in-law managed to get my mother-in-law to stop her ruthless antics on the day the pain and bitterness I felt remained, this was not in my nature to remain silent and unresponsive. I was losing my firecracker energy. This woman was slowly draining me, and it had to be put to an end. Fast forward 3 years to where the events of today's story take place. We found ourselves gathered around the dining table in Ethan's childhood home, the place where his parents still resided on a quiet Sunday evening. My mother-in-law had extended the ever-so-gracious invitation to us, even including Ryan. You'd think it was a special occasion, or something given the way she'd invited us all, but I couldn't shake the nagging suspicion that there was more to this dinner plan than met the eye. And as it turned out, my suspicion were right on the money. But at the time, it felt like a somewhat pleasant surprise. At some point the ball dropped, and this is the beginning of what turned out to be a very messy series of events. My mother-in-law started to garner everyone's attention. As she had an important announcement to make, she pulled out a paper and started reading it. Attention everyone. I have an announcement to make. As you all know, my birthday's coming up, and so I wanted to let you know what I've been planning for the very special day. I've decided that we're going to take a trip to Hawaii. The paper was confirmation of the Hawaii trip. That sounds fantastic. What, that's amazing, Emma. I've always wanted to go to Hawaii. Oh my goodness. This is great news. I'm so excited. I don't even know what to say. Thanks so much, Ma. Oh, actually, you're not coming. Honey, what are you talking about? This wasn't part of the plan. I made some last-minute arrangements. I managed to cancel her ticket before they gave us extra charges. Oh, so my ticket was already bought. She just went ahead and canceled it. Why does this woman hate me so much? Mom, what are you talking about? Ryan. And I seem to be the only one silent in this whole situation. As a whole flurry of harsh words was exchanged back and forth, eventually, after some poking and prodding for a decent enough excuse, Evelyn finally stated, Okay, fine. I'll tell you the reason why I thought it best that Emma sits this family event out. As you all know, I'm getting a little bit older, and I've decided that I want the remaining years of my life to be centered on being around the people I care most about. It was all going relatively well until my mother-in-law dropped a bombshell. She said, Unfortunately, Emma just doesn't belong on that list. My jaw practically hit the floor as I responded, Wow, Mom, really, what's the matter with you? She shot back, There's nothing wrong with me. Don't you dare disrespect me. I'm just stating a fact. I couldn't hold back and retorted, Well, by that logic, then Ryan shouldn't be able to go either, right? Since he isn't technically family. As you're stating, the tension at that dining table was thick enough to cut with a knife, but we all know that's preposterous. And he is part of the family. And ever since Ethan and Emma got married, that means she is part of the family. Well, obviously with Ryan it's different. You know that he's just so precious. And he's our sweet baby angel. He's always been here, but Emma hasn't. So that's why I'm just not comfortable with her coming on the trip, and it's my birthday, so I get to decide whatever we want. Come on, Emma, we're leaving at once. No. The way that I firmly said no commanded all of the attention in the room, including my antagonist, who was trying to stifle a smile this entire time, but at that moment, she wiped it off her face. Evelyn, you've made it clear since the beginning that you do not like me, and every day for the past 3 years I have endured your insufferable illness. You think we all don't see how you act. You think that we all don't notice that you're a narcissist little girl? You better watch the way you speak to me. You are in my house, and I not for long. I'm just about to leave, actually, before things escalated further. I turned to my dear husband, who was glaring at his mother with fierce intensity. I took a deep breath and said, Babe, I love you with all my heart, and I've given this my best shot for a long time, but it's becoming clear to me that your mother will never fully embrace me as part of this family, no matter how hard I try, no matter how many times I swallow my words. She'll always have an issue with me. There was a heavy silence that hung in the air as I let those words sink in. You should go on this trip. You can't miss it as much as your mother is crazy. She's still your mother, and you love her and she loves you, so you have to go. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. I then turned to my mother-in-law, whose mouth was agape because of what I just said, and that's for you. Unfortunately for you, I am in love with your son, and I'm not going anywhere. You might think that you can push me away, but I will always be here. Even when you go to Hawaii, you will always be thinking about me, because if I'm being honest, I think you're obsessed with me. How dare you? I should slap you right now. I'm not finished. You are obsessed with me. You're obsessed with tearing me down, and I cannot even imagine why when all I've done is shown you kindness and patience, even when you didn't deserve it, but enough is enough. You don't want me to go to Hawaii with you. Fine. You don't think I'm part of the family. Fine. But I will always be here as long as I breathe. I will always be here for Ethan, George, and even Ryan, but never for you. At that moment, I realized that I finally shut her up. She left her mouth open as if she was searching for something to say, anything to say, but her mind wouldn't let her. Finally, I managed to keep her quiet. I said goodbye to the rest of the family members, kissed my husband on the cheek, and began to walk out. Let me drive you home. At least I can't let you take a cab. Please don't worry about me, babe. I love you, and thank you so much for loving me. But I'll be fine. You have a trip to discuss. Okay, if you say you're fine, then I'll believe you. Oh, don't forget your purse. Right? My purse. I left in the kitchen. Once I arrived at some point, though, Evelyn went into the kitchen, I think, to catch her breath after the whole situation. After being berated like that, I too would have done something similar. What do you want? Don't worry about me, sweetheart. I'm just here to collect my things. Well, make it quick. I want you out of my house. I can't believe you said those things to me with that. She quickly stormed out. She was filled with so much anger that she didn't even want to see me out the door. At that moment, I scoffed at her ridicule heinous and reached for my purse when I noticed a piece of paper next to it. My eyes glanced over it and noticed that it was Evelyn's handwriting. I believed that the time that it must have been a piece of paper detailing the itinerary for the trip, because I was feeling a bit relieved about not going. I couldn't resist the temptation to sneak a peek and see the wild time I'd be skipping, so I snatched the letter and started reading, and then boom, right there in the letter it said, Beatrix Ryan, you've always been like a son to me, and you know, I love you dearly. Whoa, so turns out this was a letter meant for Ryan. Bit strange, but I guess it's thoughtful. For some reason, my curious eyes began to read further, and the love and care you have shown for me throughout the years will never be forgotten. I hate to admit it, but even when it comes to my son Ethan, I feel as though the love we once shared is no longer there. Wait, what is she saying? She loves Ryan more than she loves Ethan. That simply couldn't be. I continued to read the paper, and with each new line, I got more astonished at what I was reading. I simply couldn't believe it. There was a lot to unpack, and even though it wasn't my place to read that letter, I'm really glad that I did. Once I finished reading the whole letter, I couldn't sit still. I started pacing back and forth in the kitchen, my mind racing, and then like a lightning bolt. It struck me, everyone who absolutely needed to be in the know about this letter was right there in that room. This was the moment to take action. I gave the letter another read, just to double-check that I wasn't going crazy or imagining things, and just as I thought, yep, it was the same thing I read the first time. I won't stop into the dining room to meet only 3 pairs of eyes looking back at me. Emma, I am so sorry for what my wife has tried to put you through. Don't worry one bit. You will come with us to Hawaii as long as I'm around. She's just in a funk right now. But don't worry, I'll convince her to change her mind. I don't know what's gotten into her recently, but don't worry, I will change her mind. As I said, George, please don't worry about me. As I said, I'm fine. I'm more than fine, because I have found some interesting news that I need to share with everyone, and I especially need to share it with Ethan. Ethan and Ryan's ears perked up. I saw the flash of worry that ran across Ethan's face. Perhaps he thought that this was too much for me to handle, and that I wanted to ask for a divorce. Oftentimes, when I would complain about his mother to him, he'd agree with me and wonder how I managed to keep up with her nonsense for so long. I'd always tell him that it was because I loved him way too much to let him go, and that I'd go to hell and back for him. I noticed that Wicked Witch of the West wasn't around, so I asked, "Where is Evelyn? She needs to be here for this too." "Oh, I mentioned earlier, she appears to be in a bit of a funk. After you shouted at her, she mentioned having a slight headache and decided to retreat upstairs for a nap to nurse it. We knew she wouldn't be back down for quite some time because she's really particular about her beauty sleep, and her routines tend to inconvenience others, which usually left me feeling annoyed. But this situation was different. It was absolutely crucial for her to be present. It's okay. Emma, you can tell us and we'll inform her when she wakes up. I hesitated, considering the information that I knew I wanted to see the redness on her face from embarrassment. I think you should just go ahead and tell us, sweetie. It's okay. And Ethan has anxiety. It would be bad to keep him waiting. That was true. Ethan's anxiety got really bad at times, and I could see him begin to fidget from the anticipation. Okay, fine. I'll show you guys what I found when I was in the kitchen collecting my purse and getting ready to leave. I found something interesting that I think you all need to know about. I pulled out the paper. I found and began to read it. Reads, Dearest Ryan, you know that you have always been like a son to me, and you know that I love you dearly, and the love and care you have shown for me throughout the years will never be forgotten. I hate to admit it, but even when it comes to my son Ethan, I feel as though the love we once shared is no longer there. What is she saying? What is this? I continued reading, Ethan. I just don't see eye to eye like we used to. And honestly, I think it's because of Emma. Ever since he married that girl, he no longer has time for me. He doesn't love me. And therefore, I don't think I love him. I love you, and you are my son. And on that note, I need to inform you that I've decided to revise my will to ensure that all my possessions go to you, and not Ethan. I'm aware it might hurt him, but frankly, I've reached a point where I couldn't care less. It's that dreadful Emma woman who has tainted my affection for him. I hope you've received and understood this letter well. The reason why I didn't want to approach you about it in person is that, and it pains me to admit this, I couldn't risk seeing the rejection on your face. I know you love Ethan, like he's your brother, and most likely you won't approve. But I don't care. I'm giving you everything. The money, the house, the cars, and even my small businesses. They're all yours, whether you like it or not. If you want to talk about this further, please call me and we can discuss it. I look forward to hearing your response. I will love you forever and always. Your second mom. I finally looked up from reading the letter, and I was met with a flurry of mixed emotions. George looked like he was going to cry. Ryan looked stunned, but Ethan looked like he was going to murder someone. I can't believe she said all those things. Is she being serious right now? So the reason why she's doing all of this is because of Emma. She hates Emma so much that she'd not include me in her will just to spite me. And Emma, she's officially lost her mind, you guys. I don't even know what to say. This has gone far enough. I've had it with this woman and her toxic behavior. What are we going to do at that moment? I had an idea. 1 week had gone by, and it was time for the designated Hawaii trip. Evelyn woke up and found a letter from her husband on her bedside table. It read, Good morning. Gorgeous. We decided to let you get some more beauty rest. Don't worry, your bags have all been packed. Just find us at the airport. Evelyn then got ready and headed to the airport, looking around frantically for the people with whom she was meant to go on this birthday trip. She tried calling them, but they all wouldn't answer. She jumped to the assumption that they must have already boarded the plane, making it impossible for them to answer her call. In a state of panic, she hurriedly made her way onto her own flight, desperately hoping to catch up with them once they touched down in Hawaii. The grueling 12-hour flight felt like an eternity, and as soon as she disembarked, she video-called George. Hey George, where on earth are you guys? I overslept and just saw your note, which would have been a cute idea if I hadn't slept in so late. I got to the airport and tried calling you guys, but none of you were responding. I just assumed that you were already boarded, but it doesn't matter now, because now we're in Hawaii. How amazing. Tell me where you are, so we can meet up and let the festivities begin. That won't be happening. Evelyn. Well, what do you mean? Tell me where you are. I'm at home. What, you heard me? I'm at home. We're all at home. Say hi, everyone. George panned out his phone to show that everyone himself. Ryan, Ethan, and me were all in his house sitting at the same dining table, where we all heard the tragic news from a week before. What do you mean, why are you at home? You see, Emma brought some interesting information to our attention a week ago, and ever since then, we decided that we'd much rather spend our time in boring old Florida with her than anywhere else with you. Evelyn gasped. You think we wouldn't find out? Find out what, my baby? Oh, don't you baby me. You were really going to cut me out of the will, Mom? How did you even find out about that? Oh, that wretched girl that you hate so much. Emma found your stupid letter in the kitchen. I don't know what you're talking about. Evelyn lying right now is only adding more nails to the coffin. Ryan, tell them. You got to believe me. I did nothing of the sort. We all read the letter, Evelyn. The jig is up. But I didn't do anything. Emma is making everything up. Oh, am I? You are so pathetic. It actually makes me sick. We all know what you said, and what you tried to do. Thank God. I was nosy enough to read the whole thing. Ethan, George, please no. Evelyn, enough is enough. You're done. You don't get to say anything else. You messed up big time. Your hatred has caused you to be blind. Now you have to suffer the consequences of being alone on your birthday, because of what you've done. I hope you can use this time in Hawaii to reflect on your actions, but I'll be alone. It won't be fun. Maybe people would like to hang out with you more, if you weren't such a raging wit. Have fun, and with that, George hung up the phone. We all let out a sigh of relief, and I was the first person to start laughing. Eventually, Ethan joined in, and before we knew it, we were all bursting with laughing and cackling at the dining table, just laughing at how crazy the situation was. The look on her face, once she realized the gig was up, was hilarious. Her face turned pale, all the blood drained from her face, and I could tell that that was the first time in a long time that she felt embarrassed. Evelyn had to spend her vacation alone, oftentimes calling George to see if he at least would come and join her, because canceling the reservation she made would be expensive. But every time he kept denying it, he said that when she comes back, they were going to have to implement some ground rules that were to be followed. If she still wanted to be married to him, Evelyn began to be very apologetic and frantic, a complete 180 from what she normally acted like, which was honestly surprising. Ethan also mentioned that if Evelyn still wanted to be in his life, she had to drastically change her attitude, otherwise he was ready to walk out of her life forever. Their relationship is still rocky, and Ethan said that if Evelyn ever disrespected him ever again, even if it's the smallest snide remark she could make, he would cut her off completely, the same way that she was planning on cutting him off. As for Ryan, he thought it best to stop being so nice to, as it was clearly enabling her toxic behavior. So not only did Evelyn end up spending a miserable time in a beautiful place, but she also risked losing the 3 most important people in her life. She now has very rocky relationships with all of them, and she has to change to be better. As for me, I messaged her and told her that I need time to see if I'm going to forgive her for all of her injustices, and she was apologizing and begging for me to talk some sense into the men in her life. I obviously refused, stating that this is the bed she made for herself, and now she has to lay in it. And even to this day, Evelyn is still trying to mend the very broken relationships that she caused. I just hope that she learned her lesson. Story 2. My 13-year-old nephew met my wife for the first time and said, "I've seen you before." She froze, and what happened next left me shocked. What happened after that moment changed everything. I thought I knew. My name is Alex. I'm a 30-year-old man who has been through a lot recently. Although some time has passed, I still feel like it all happened yesterday. I wanted to talk about this with someone outside of my family and friends. So here I am. Let me start from the beginning. I was born long after my brother. He was 16 years old when I was born, due to the large age difference. We never had a close sibling bond. Although he spoiled me a lot, I felt that he treated me more like his own son than like his brother. By the time I was old enough to remember anything, my brother had already left for college when I was 10 years old. I attended his wedding. They were already expecting a baby at that time, so I was excited not just for the wedding, but also to meet my nephew and have another kid to play with 5 months after the wedding. My nephew Tony was born. I still clearly remember visiting him in the hospital right after he was born. I was so excited to see his little face and felt an overwhelming amount of love for him. After Tony came home, I spent all the time I could with my brother to help take care of him. As the years passed, my love for Tony only grew. I always offered to take care of him whenever my brother needed help, instead of seeing ourselves as uncle and nephew Tony, and I felt more like brothers. That's why it was so hard for both of us when I had to move to another state, Florida, to study and work. But I made sure to always call home and keep in touch with my family, especially Tony. The distance did not break our bond. In my last year college, I met my wife Kelly. She was a soccer star, and I still don't know how I caught her attention, since I wasn't interested in sports at all. I spent most of my time reading in the library, but one day, Kelly found me there and started talking to me. What I loved most about was how confident and charming she was. Later, after we had been together for a while, she told me that she was actually nervous to talk to me, but I would never have guessed it from the confidence with which she approached me. We went on several dates and quickly realized that although we had different interests, we fit very well together. We shared the same sense of humor and spent all our dates laughing until our stomachs hurt. It didn't take long for us to make our relationship official. I always made it clear to Kelly how much I love my family, so she met them through many video calls. The only person I hadn't told Kelly about was my nephew Tony. Although Kelly had already met almost all the important members of my family, she still hadn't met Tony. However, I did talk about him a lot one day. Kelly asked me why she hadn't met my nephew. Yet even though I talked so much about him, I said, "Honey, I haven't introduced you to Tony because he's only 11 years old. I want to protect his innocence from my adult life." She replied, "I don't think 11 years old is too young. I'd like to meet him and be a part of his life too. Tony is the most important person to me, but he's still a child. He doesn't need to be involved in my romantic life." I explained, "It seems like you're keeping me away because you doubt the future of our relationship," she said. "What, that's not true at all." I assured her, "You were afraid to introduce me to Tony in case things didn't work out between us. You don't want to introduce him to someone who won't be a constant in life." She continued, "You've got it all wrong. It's about protecting him, not doubting us." I said, Okay, let's just leave it alone. Just understand that I see a long future for us," she said, "but I'm simply not ready to mix our worlds yet." I explained, I understood why Kelly was upset, but I wasn't ready to involve Tony in that part of my life. I wanted to protect Tony's innocence, even though deep down I knew I wasn't really doing that. In my mind, he was still that baby I met for the first time in the hospital, and I wanted to keep seeing him that way, at least until he became a teenager. 2 years after we graduated from college, Kelly asked me to move in with her, and I gladly accepted. I was excited to live with a woman I was so deeply in love with during that time. I also met Kelly's entire family. Kelly was still a little hurt that I hadn't told Tony about her, but she decided to let it go, instead of insisting on the subject. I could tell it still bothered her because she would mention it briefly before changing the subject. When Tony turned 13, I waited a couple of months before finally telling him about Kelly. One day we connected on a video call while Kelly was out running. "Tony, I have something to tell you." I said, "What is it?" He replied, "I have a girlfriend, really." "Oh my God, tell me everything," he exclaimed. "Her name is Kelly. We met in college, and we've been together since my senior year. Is she a good person?" he asked. "She's the best. You're going to love her," I assured him. "Then I can't wait to meet her." "Well, we were actually planning to come over for Thanksgiving." "Wait, seriously, that's bad timing." "What do you mean?" I asked, confused. "I got into that boarding high school I've been talking about for years. I have to be there next month. That's amazing, Tony. I'm so proud of you." "Yeah, but I won't be there for Thanksgiving. Don't worry about that anyway. I'm planning to marry Kelly, so you'll have plenty of time to meet her. You're already planning weddings." "I love it," he said, laughing. Tony looked directly at Kelly for a few seconds, his eyes carrying confusion that quickly turned into recognition. Before I could ask what was happening, he pointed at her with a surprised expression. "I've seen you before," Tony said. Clearly confused, Kelly went pale, as if all the blood had drained from her face at once. I looked from one to the other, trying to understand what was going on. Tony's words echoed in my head, and I felt a chill down my spine. Something was clearly wrong. "Where have you seen her?" "Tony," I asked, trying to stay calm while Kelly seemed unable to move or speak. Tony hesitated for a second, as if trying to recall some specific detail. She's Dad's girlfriend. I've seen her at our house several times," Tony replied, frowning. "I thought you knew each other since you were always there too." My mind stopped. Every word he said felt like a blow. Dad's girlfriend. The world around me began to spin, and I felt my throat go dry. I looked at Kelly, who now had wide eyes and a look of pure panic. "This isn't true. Is it, Kelly?" I asked, my voice low, almost a whisper. Every second that passed without a response from her felt like an eternity. She finally opened her mouth, but no words came out. She just mumbled something incomprehensible. Tony was looking at both of us, clearly realizing that he had said something important, and maybe even wrong. Alex, I can explain. Kelly finally managed to say, her voice trembling. Explain what I demanded. Now feeling the anger grow inside me. You were with Tony's dad. You were cheating on me with my brother. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All that love, all that trust, the conversations about marriage, everything now felt like a big lie, and the worst part was that Kelly couldn't even deny it. She just looked at me with pleading eyes, while Tony seemed to realize for the first time that something was very wrong. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Alex, she started, but I was already losing my patience. Since when, Kelly? I demanded, my voice now sharp. Since when have you been cheating on me? She lowered her head, tears streaming down her face. I knew the truth was coming, and part of me didn't even want to hear it, but I needed to know. Since before we moved in together, she admitted, her voice barely audible. I stood still before we moved in together. That meant that while we were making plans for our life together, while I was introducing her to my family and talking about the future, she was betraying our trust. Not just cheating on me, but cheating on me with my own brother. A knot formed in my stomach, and I felt nauseous. So that's why you insisted so much on meeting Tony, wasn't it? I asked, my voice filled with contempt, because you already knew my brother and wanted to keep up appearances. You wanted everything to look normal while hiding your visits to his house. How could you? Kelly began crying more intensely, covering her face with her hands. Tony looked shocked, not knowing what to do or say. He was a 13-year-old kid trapped in adult drama, and I felt a deep pain, realizing that he was involved in all of this. You were never honest with me. I continued, my voice now almost breaking. I loved you, Kelly. I was planning to marry you, to introduce you to Tony, because he is the most important person to me, and now I find out you were with his dad. How could you do this? She tried to approach me, extending her hand, but I took a step back, refusing any contact. Please, Alex, I made a mistake. It was a mistake, she pleaded, a mistake. I laughed bitterly. This wasn't a mistake. It was a series of choices. You chose to deceive me, chose to be with my brother, chose to lie to me day after day. There is no excuse for this. Kelly, at that moment, Tony started crying as well, feeling the weight of everything that was happening. I didn't know, Uncle Alex. I thought you knew about all of this. He sobbed, his eyes wide with despair. I approached Tony, kneeling down to be at his level, trying to ignore the whirlwind of emotions inside me for a moment to comfort him. It's not your fault, Tony. You didn't do anything wrong. Okay? I said, my voice softening a little as I placed a hand on his shoulder. You just told the truth, and you are not to blame for any of this. Tony nodded, still crying. I turned to Kelly, who was still standing there with the expression of someone who knew everything was over. I want you to leave. I finally said, my voice cold and determined. It's over, Kelly. I don't want to see you anymore. You destroyed everything we had. She tried to argue, but I raised my hand, signaling her to stop. Leave now. Kelly hesitated, but then she turned and left, still crying. I stayed there, kneeling beside Tony, trying to process everything that had happened. I felt a mixture of deep sadness and intense anger. All that time, all that trust, everything had been destroyed in a single moment. Tony hugged me, and I hugged him back, trying to find some comfort amidst the chaos. My brother, my own brother, had done this to me and Kelly. The woman I had planned to spend the rest of my life with had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I knew that nothing would ever be the same again after Kelly left. I remained silent for a while, still hugging Tony. The pain of betrayal and the revelation was intense, but something else began to grow inside me. The need for answers. I needed to confront my brother. I needed to hear his side of the story. I needed to understand how this had happened. I hugged Tony for a moment longer, then carefully wiped his tears and tried to give him a comforting smile. It's going to be okay, Tony, but now I need to sort some things out with your dad, all right? I said to him. He just nodded, visibly shaken. I didn't want to involve him more than he already was, so I left him with my mother, who was visiting and had noticed that something very serious had happened. I quickly explained that we needed to talk privately, and she agreed to take care of Tony. I got into the car and drove to my brother's house. My mind a whirlwind of emotions, anger, sadness, confusion. Every mile that passed seemed to increase my indignation. How could he do this to me? He knew how much Kelly meant to me, and even so, I arrived at my brother's house and knocked on the door hard, my patience running out by the second it took a few moments, and when he finally opened the door, his face showed surprise at seeing me there. "Alex, what happened?" he asked. But I wasn't in the mood for pleasantries. "We need to talk now," I said. Walking past him and entering the house, he closed the door behind me, clearly confused by my attitude. "Sure, what's going on?" he asked again. Seeming genuinely concerned, I turned to him, my expression serious, trying to contain the anger I felt. "It's about Kelly," I started, and I could see his expression change immediately from surprise to something I couldn't quite identify. "Kelly, what happened to her?" he asked. "Somewhat President, don't pretend you don't know, Robert. I know everything. I know you were with her," I said, my voice breaking a little. "I know you were having an affair with my girlfriend." Robert's face paled, and he took a step back, completely stunned. "What, Alex, wait. Where did you get that from?" he stammered, clearly in shock. "Tony told me he recognized Kelly and said she was your girlfriend. How could you do this to me? How could you betray me? Your own brother like this?" I exploded, feeling the anger bubble and the tears form in my eyes. Robert looked completely lost. He opened his mouth several times trying to say something, but nothing came out. Finally, he took a deep breath and shook his head. "Alex, I didn't know it was Kelly. I never knew she was your girlfriend. She never introduced herself as Kelly to me," he said, his voice desperate, trying to reach me. "She told me her name was Rachel for a moment." I was speechless. My mind was in a state of confusion, trying to process what he had said. Rachel, she was pretending to be someone else. But even so, the betrayal was still there. "Do you expect me to believe that?" I asked, my voice filled with pain. "Do you want me to believe you never realized she was the same person? And even if she used another name, you were still with me while being with another woman, you still betrayed me." Robert seemed on the verge of tears. Now he ran his hands through his hair, his expression full of regret and despair. "Alex, I didn't know. I swear I didn't. No, it was the same person we met about a year and a half ago, and she told me she was single. I never connected the dots. I never thought you and she could be the same person," he said, his voice breaking. "If I had known, I would never have done this. I swear, Alex, you're my brother. I would never hurt you. Like that." On purpose, there was sincerity in his eyes, and that only made the situation even more painful, because even if he didn't know, even if Kelly had pretended to be someone else, the fact was that my own brother had gotten involved with the woman I loved, and nothing he said could change that. It doesn't matter. "Robert, you were with me while maintaining a relationship with another woman. I trusted you, and look where that got us," I said. Feeling the anger turned into something darker, a deep sadness, a sense of loss that seemed impossible to overcome. Robert approached me, trying to reach out, but I took a step back, refusing any contact. "Please, Alex, forgive me. I would do anything to undo this, anything to regain your trust," he said, tears now running down his face. I looked at him for a long moment, seeing the regret in his eyes, and something in me knew he truly hadn't meant to hurt me, but the damage was done, and there was no going back. It didn't matter that he didn't know. It didn't matter that had been deceived by Kelly. The pain was there, and I couldn't just pretend everything was okay. "I need to leave," I finally said, my voice low and emotionless. "I can't stay here. I need time. I need space. You hurt me, Robert, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you." He nodded, the pain clear on his face. "I understand. Just please know that I love you, Alex. You're my brother, and I would give anything not to have caused you this pain," he said, his voice broken without saying anything else. I turned and left the house, feeling an overwhelming weight on my chest. That wasn't the outcome I wanted, but it was the only one I could accept at that moment. I left without looking back, knowing that my relationship with my brother would never be the same as I drove back home. The emptiness inside me seemed to grow, absorbing every positive thought I might have had. It wasn't just Kelly that I had lost, it was also Al, the trust. In my own brother, I needed space. I needed time to figure out how to move forward, and above all, I needed to find a way to deal with the pain and betrayal that seemed to have torn every piece of my heart apart. When I got home, I found Tony sitting on the couch, his eyes still red. He looked at me, as if searching for some sign that things could go back to normal. I just sat next to him and hugged him, feeling my own tears fall again. "It's going to be okay, Tony." I whispered, more for self than for him. "We're going to be okay. Somehow we'll get through this," and there we stayed. Just two brothers trying to find comfort in each other, while the world around us seemed to have crumbled when I prepared to leave my mother's house. Tony came to me, his eyes still red from crying. He seemed unsure, as if he didn't know whether he should say something or just stay silent. I couldn't leave him like that. He wasn't to blame for anything that had happened, and as broken as I was, I didn't want him to feel responsible. "Uncle Alex," Tony began, but the words wouldn't come out. I simply approached him and hugged him tightly. I felt his small hands wrapping around me, and he started sobbing again. That moment hurt more than anything else. I had always wanted to protect Tony from anything painful or difficult, and now there he was hurt by something I could never have prevented. "It's going to be okay, Tony. I promise," I said. Softly, holding back my own tears. I didn't know if it would really be true. But in that moment, it was what he needed to hear, and it was the promise I was willing to try to keep. I hugged him for a long moment before pulling away and running my hand through his hair. "Take care of your dad. All right, and take care of yourself too," I said, trying to give him a reassuring smile, even though inside everything felt like it was falling apart. Tony nodded, his eyes still wet with tears, and I finally stepped away, giving him one last wave before leaving the house. I knew there was still a lot to resolve, but for now, I needed distance. I needed time to breathe and figure out how to move forward. When I got home, I was greeted by a flood of notifications on my phone messages and more messages from Kelly. She was begging to meet with me to talk and try to work things out. Words like, "I'm sorry," and "please forgive me," were repeated. In almost every message I just sighed, and with the same determination I had when I sent her away, deleted each one without even opening them. That chapter of my life was closed. In the following days, it felt like I was trying to navigate through unknown territory. One day at a time, I went to work, came back home, and focused solely on maintaining a routine. Sometimes it felt like I was on autopilot, just going through the motions that kept me moving, without really processing what had happened, but I knew I needed that. I needed time to heal, even if that healing came through the simplest, most mundane routine. It was at work that I found a kind of refuge. I threw myself into my projects and dedicated myself fully. I volunteered for any extra task, took on responsibilities that others avoided, and made sure to deliver everything in the best way possible. Not because I was seeking recognition, but because I needed to occupy my mind. I needed something to remind me that I still had value. As time went by, I began to see the fruits of that effort. My boss noticed my dedication and offered me a promotion. I began leading an important project, something that made me feel useful and capable again. Little by little, the sense of loss and pain was replaced by a sense of purpose. I was building something for myself, something that no one could take away. It was during this period that I met Sophie. She wasn't like Kelly, and at first I wasn't sure if I wanted to enter into a relationship again. I was afraid of trusting, afraid of opening up and ending up being betrayed again. But Sophie was patient. She didn't push, didn't try to rush anything from the beginning. Everything between us was simple and honest. We started as friends, going out for coffee, laughing at small things, and gradually that friendship turned into something more with Sophie. I learned that love didn't have to be complicated, that it didn't need to be a roller coaster of highs and lows. She was kind, fun, and genuinely cared about me. She knew about Kelly, knew about what had happened, and never judged my hesitations. On the contrary, she respected each of them and gave me the space I needed. I remember the first time I told her I loved her. It was a simple moment without grand gestures or declarations, but it was sincere. We were sitting on the couch watching a movie when I turned to her and said, "I love you, Sophie." She smiled, her eyes filling with tears, and hugged me. In that moment, I felt that I was finally leaving the past behind. As my life moved forward, Kelly seemed to fall apart. I heard about her through mutual friends, people who still had some contact or heard news indirectly. After we broke up, her life was never the same again. She tried to move on, tried to start other relationships, but it seemed that no one wanted to stay with her for real. Maybe it was the weight of the wrong choices she made. Maybe it was the guilt she carried with her. But the fact was that Kelly ended up alone financially. Things weren't going well for her either. She lost her job due to impulsive decisions and without stability, saw her personal projects fail one after another. She even sought help from some friends, but many of them no longer wanted to get involved more and more. It seemed that life was exacting a high price for all the lies and betrayals she had committed. My brother, on the other hand, managed to move on, though our relationship was never the same again. After that day, there were months of silence between us. I simply couldn't look at him the same way, and the pain of betrayal was an abyss that seemed impossible to cross. But over time, Robert reached out to me again. He apologized more sincerely, acknowledging his mistakes and how much he had hurt me. It wasn't easy, but eventually I accepted his apologies, not because I had forgotten what he did, but because I didn't want to carry that weight for the rest of my life. Even so, the distance remained. We were no longer the inseparable brothers we once were, but we were cordial. We knew that somehow we needed to coexist. Especially for Tony's sake, Robert seemed to have learned from his mistakes. He distanced himself from toxic relationships and focused on being a better father to Tony. And in some way, I respected that Tony, for his part, grew up and became an incredible man. Despite all the difficulties he faced when he was just a kid, he showed his strength and resilience that made me immensely proud. He always kept in touch with me, and our conversations, little by little, became lighter and more carefree whenever we met. There was that inevitable moment when we laughed about the past, about how chaotic everything had been. Remember when I said I had seen Kelly before? Tony would say, laughing, and how speechless you were. Ah, how could I forget? I would reply, laughing along with him. I think it was the most surreal moment of my life. We laughed because in the end, we had overcome it. Each of us had found a way to move on. Me, now married to Sophie, happier than I ever imagined I could be. Tony grown up and building his own life with dreams and plans that I knew he would achieve. And even my brother, who, although he had made mistakes, managed to restart and became a better person because of it. As for Kelly, the last I heard of her, she was still alone and trying to find some direction. There was no resentment on my part. I had truly loved her, but that love had turned into a lesson about trust, about choices, and about the value of respecting oneself. Kelly made her choices, and now she faced the consequences. I moved on, I left the past where it belonged, and allowed myself to live a future that made me happy, and that in the end was all that mattered. Story 3. My mom is threatening not to attend my wedding after my golden child brother proposed to my fiancé, so I told her she can toss her invite in the trash because I won't beg her to be there. Mark was my mom's baby boy, and she didn't do much to try and hide it. If my sisters and I got gifts, they were for us to share, but my mom made it pretty clear that Mark's things were only for him and we shouldn't touch them when Mark would screw up. I get punished for not being a good role model and showing him the proper way to behave. For example, Mar went through a phase of breaking his toys, and I got the beating because obviously he learned that behavior from me. It was around this time that I started distancing myself from my brother. I got my first job when I turned 17 because I wanted to finally get my car and make money that they couldn't force me to give to Mark. I got my first car at 18 after all of my hard work. When Mark expressed wanting my parents to buy him his car, my mom came to me and told me to give him my car because he needed it more. When I refused, she threatened to kick me out at the start of the new school year. I moved away from college and cut contact with him around the time I moved back. My sister told me they had been seeing a family therapist, and my parents wanted to apologize for their treatment of us. I was hesitant but agreed, as long as they would be genuine, and the reconciliation process started when I moved back home. Then I met Jen, and I met at a bar when I moved back in October, and hit it off. Well, she was easily the most beautiful and intelligent woman I ever met, and we met up a few times more before we made it official. I wasn't sure where my relationship with her was going, or my relationship with my parents was going. Mostly I didn't want to mention my family because I was ready to cut contact again. If needed at dinner with my family, my parents asked to see pictures of my girlfriend, and they passed My phone around the table, Mark saw it and blew up, calling me a poop brother for dating his ex-girlfriend. He demanded I break it off with her, and I refused when I asked Jen about it. She confirmed they dated and gave me the details about their breakup. They were only together for a month before he broke things off with her because he was bored of being in a relationship and never really wanted to settle down anyway. On Jen's birthday this year, I took her to a fancy dinner with our families and her closest friends to ask her to marry me. Mark flipped again and blew up about me proposing to her, which my sisters and I immediately shut down. Mark had been quiet about the whole thing for the last 2 months. I didn't see him much and figured he was in low contact with me, which I had no problem with. Then he invited me and Jin for a family dinner at his apartment with my parents and sisters. I thought it was weird, but my parents and sisters were also going, so we agreed to go. The dinner was nice, nothing too fancy, and we moved to the living room to talk about 30 minutes in a normal conversation. Mark stood up and told us he had an announcement. He made a long speech about being happy to have his family around for his big moment, then got on one knee and pulled out this cheap ring while asking Jen to marry him. Jen was confused and uncomfortable. She demanded that he put it away and stand up. My dad tried to make a grab for Mark, but I got to him first and punched him. He said something like, wanted to show me that JY wasn't really into me and just wanted to get back at him. This is the last straw. Jen and I went home and decided to uninvite Mark. A few days later, my mom stopped by my house and said she wanted to discuss my wedding. She asked me why I was so adamant about Mark not coming. She said that I shouldn't be so insecure about Mark and Jen's previous relationship, and that uninviting him, as he said that if I weren't going to re-invite Mark, then she would not be coming either, because I'm ostracizing her son. I shrugged and told her that if that's what she wants, she can toss her invite in the trash, because I won't beg her to be there. She asked me if I would be okay with her not attending, and I told her it wouldn't be the first time she missed an event. Because of Mark, she said I was being in awe for throwing her past mistakes in her face, and she stormed out. About 2 weeks after she decided not to attend the wedding, she stopped by and said she wanted to clear the air and talk about everything she said. She couldn't get over me not inviting her because of a simple mistake. I reminded her that his simple mistake was proposing to my fiancé with me sitting less than 3 feet away from him, and she said it was just a joke. Things got pretty heated up, and we were having a screaming match. Jen got up and started walking towards the door. My mom followed her, still screaming at her by this point. She's yelling about her tearing our family apart, while Jen was unlocking the front door. My mom grabbed her hair and pulled her to the ground, still screaming. She hit her and tried to claw her face, and I dragged her off of her and threw her outside. She banged on the door for a few minutes while I made sure Jen was okay before she left, and called the both of us repeatedly when I was sure Jen was okay. I texted my mom and told her not to bother to reach. I texted my mom and told her not to bother reaching out again, because we'd never speak to her again. Even though Jin doesn't want to pursue anything, it's not up to us to decide whether it goes further, but they would keep our preference in mind. After that, I was shocked when my mom tried to corner me leaving my job and screamed at me about trying to ruin her life. She kept screaming that I was an awful son for trying to get her arrested over a small misunderstanding, and she didn't understand what she'd done to deserve being punished like this. I told her that she shouldn't have hit Jen. If she didn't like being in legal trouble, she demanded that I tell the police to forget the report, which I refused. I told her what the officer said about it being out of my hands. I also told her that I would never forgive her for what she did to Jen and what she did to me, and my sisters growing up. She started to say how I should move on like my sisters. But I cut her off and told her that she should take their forgiveness and move on, because she would never receive it from me after cutting ties with my mom. The weeks that followed were turbulent, but there was a sense of relief. Jen and I focused on planning our wedding, and I made sure she felt safe, but things didn't calm down, as I had hoped. My mom, driven by anger and the need to regain control of the situation, started spreading lies about me and Jen on social media. She posted vague but obvious messages about ungrateful children and manipulative women, tearing families apart, even hinting that Jen was the reason for the conflict between Mark and me. Soon, distant relatives and old friends started reaching out, questioning why I was being so cruel to my own mother, without even knowing what really happened. My mom spread her version of the story, making it seem like I had kicked her out of my life and home over a small misunderstanding, and that Jen was manipulating my mind. At first, I tried to explain, but I realized many people had already made up their minds. The only thing we could do was move forward with our wedding plans and ignore the circus my mom had created a month before the wedding. I got a call from my dad. He sounded nervous and hesitant, as if he was being forced to make the call. After a few seconds of awkward silence, he told me that my mom had hired a lawyer and was filing a lawsuit against me. She claimed I had assaulted her when I kicked her out of my house and was demanding compensation for the emotional damage I had supposedly caused. I was speechless. First, she invades my home, attacks my fiancé, and now she wants to sue me for reacting. I call my lawyer and explain the situation. He advised me not to contact her and let the case run its course. But deep down, the idea that my own mother could put me in such a humiliating position made me furious. It wasn't just about the money, it was the way she was willing to destroy everything to prove she was right. Even if it meant trying to tarnish my reputation and my relationship with Jen. Jen tried to comfort me, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. She was worried about what this meant for her future with me, and I feared that at any moment she might decide it wasn't worth facing all this drama. While I tried to protect Jen from the storm, my mom continued to worm her way into the lives of everyone we knew, trying to turn them against me. The court date arrived. I expected my mom to show up with her lawyer ready to tear into me legally, but to my surprised eyes, she brought Mark. He was called as a witness, and in court, he started fabricating stories about me claiming I had always been aggressive toward him, and that deep down, I'd always been jealous of my mom's favoritism. Mark lied shamelessly, saying I had a history of violence and that Jen had manipulated me to drive him away from the family. I knew it was a desperate attempt to regain control, but seeing my own brother lie so blatantly to ruin my life was hard to swallow. In the end, the judge dismissed most of their claims due to a lack of evidence and impartial witnesses, but that hardly mattered. Even if I came out victorious in court, my mom and Mark had managed to wear me down emotionally in ways I never imagined. I left there, determined to cut them out of my life for good, as painful as it was. JY and I finally got married in a simple ceremony with a few friends and my closest sister. The absence of my mom, Dad, and Mark was a heavy weight, but I had no other choice during the reception. I tried to keep a smile on my face, but I could feel the invisible presence of the conflicts that had brought us to this point. I wanted to focus on the life we were building together, but it was hard to ignore the emptiness my own family had left behind 2 months after the wedding. I received a letter from my mother's lawyer. It was a notice that she was contesting the validity of my grandfather's will, which had left a small inheritance to me and my sisters. She claimed that as my mother, she had a right to a larger portion, and that I didn't deserve anything, since according to her, I had betrayed the family. I knew it wasn't about the money. It was about control. She wanted to show that she could still manipulate the circumstances and would never lose the final word. This time, I decided to take a different approach. I posted a long message on social media, sharing the entire story. From the beginning, I talked about the favoritism, the emotional and physical abuse I endured growing up, Mark's lies, and the assault on Jen. I knew it would cause a stir, but I was ready to face the consequences. I.e.d. support from some friends and relatives who finally understood my side, but I also lost others who refused to believe it. My mother and Mark responded predictably. My mother called me ungrateful and accused me of destroying the family out of spite, while Mark simply disappeared from social media for a while. But to my surprise, my dad reached out a few days later. He was shaken and said he didn't know about everything my mom and Mark had been doing. He asked me, but I refused. I told him that as much as I wanted to believe he was a victim of my mother, he had been complicit for years, and at that point, there was nothing more to say. In the end, my mother's fight over the will didn't go in her favor, and she couldn't take the portion my grandfather had left me. She lost everything, and even had to cover the court costs. She continued to lash out at me, but her power was no longer the same. I knew she would always blame me and Jen for her own frustrations, but I was ready to move on. What remained of her was just a shadow of someone I once called mother, and though I felt a twinge of sadness, I had no regrets about keeping the door closed to her. Deep down, I knew I'd never be able to erase the scars this left on me, but at least by Jin's side, I was rebuilding a new life, far from the toxicity my own mother insisted on keeping alive, and while she and Mark continued to wallow in their own bitterness, I finally felt like I was beginning to find peace, even if it came at a high price, after finally cutting ties with my mom. Mark, and even my dad, I felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulders. JY and I decided it was time to focus on what truly mattered our life together, away from all the toxicity my family had brought. It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the only way to protect ourselves and build something that wouldn't constantly be threatened by manipulation and drama. In the beginning, there were days when the silence felt deafening. There was always that strange feeling that something was missing, as if part of me had gotten used to the constant chaos. But JY and I made a PCT never to let those thoughts distract us from our path every time a relative tried to reach out or sent a message suggesting I should forgive and forget I ignored it. My focus now was on my own future, and Jen was my partner on that journey. I threw myself into my work. I took on a new role at the company, which came with a raise and more responsibilities. What used to feel like just a job now became a passion, something I could shape and improve each day. It was an opportunity to finally feel valued for who I was, without having to deal with the expectations and pressures my mom had always placed on me. Jen was thriving too. She had started a new job, something she had always dreamed of, and our relationship was stronger than ever. Without my family's presence, there were no more arguments about past conflicts, no more emotional manipulation attempts. From my mom or Mark's lies, for the first time, we could plan our future without feeling like something was holding us back. One of the first big steps we took together was buying a house after months of searching. We found the perfect place in a quiet neighborhood with a spacious garden, where JY already dreamed of planting flowers, and creating a space to relax. The house needed some renovations. But that gave us a chance to work together on every detail, from painting to decorating each room. The process brought us even closer, and I felt that with every wall we painted and every piece of furniture we assembled, we were building a new chapter in our lives. Gradually, I realized that distancing myself from my family wasn't a loss, but a gain. The emptiness I once felt was replaced by new friendship and connections I made along the way. I befriended neighbors who became part of our routine, and JY and I started hosting dinners at our home for our new friends. Our circle was small but genuine, and that was all that mattered. The sense of stability and peace that filled my life was something I had never experienced before. Over time, the memories of the conflicts with my mom and Mark became just distant recollections, shadows of a past that no longer had power over my present. Therapy also helped me deal with those feelings, to understand that what my mom didn't define my worth as a person, and that I had the right to move forward. A few years later, JY and I decided we were ready for the next step, starting a family. JY got pregnant, and I remember the day we got the news, like it was yesterday. It was one of the happiest moments of my life, and unlike everything I feared, there was no doubt, no fear of repeating the mistakes of the past. I knew I had learned a lot and was ready to be a present and loving father, something I always wanted to be but had never seen in my own upbringing. When our son was born, it felt like all the pieces finally fell into place. Holding him in my arms for the first time brought a peace I never thought I would feel. It was a new beginning, a chance to create a loving and nurturing environment, something Jen and I were determined to do. Our focus shifted to our little family. We started creating new traditions, celebrating the small moments together. Jen and I would go to the park on Sundays, taking our son to play and run, and those moments, as simple as they were, became what I cherished most in life. I realized I didn't need a perfect family. I just needed a family that truly loved me, and I had found that with Jen. And our son at work, things were going well too. After a few years of dedication and growth, I was promoted again, this time to a leadership position. I began managing a team and had the chance to share what I had learned with the younger staff. It was as if I had finally arrived at the place I always wanted to be, but without having to sacrifice myself to get there. I was proud of what I had achieved, and even more of having done it without giving in to the pressures and emotional blackmail of the past. There was a moment when our son was about 3 years old, when I considered reaching out to my dad for one last conversation, an attempt to resolve things. But before I took any action, I remembered everything we had been through, all the times he sided with my mom while I bore the consequences. I decided I didn't need his approval anymore, or his presence. My peace was finally more important than trying to fix something that couldn't be repaired. Years went by, and life settled into a good routine full of little moments of happiness. JY and I decided to start a small business together, a home decor and craft store she had always dreamed of opening. The business grew, and we found ourselves working side by side, turning our passion into a livelihood for our family. Seeing the smile on her face every day, alongside our son who was growing up healthy and happy, was all I needed. Looking back. Now I realized that cutting ties with my family was the hardest decision I ever made, but also the most important one. My mom and Mark went their separate ways, and I have no idea how they are doing now. I know that for many people, cutting ties with one's mother is something unforgivable, but I learned that my well-being and that of my family were more important than maintaining a facade of unity. My life became a reflection of the choices I made, and I wouldn't trade any of it. I learned to value the people who genuinely love me, and I found the strength to build a life away from the shadows of the past. JY and I are ready for whatever the future holds together as a team, and for the first time in a long, long while, I can say that I am at peace. Story 4. I canceled my wedding after my mother-in-law tried to change the guest list. I'm a 29-year-old woman and EV, been with my AAL for 3 years. We got engaged 9 months ago. It was the perfect moment. Just the two of us at a quiet little spot where we had our first date. After that, we started planning a wedding that would match that vibe, small, personal, around 50 guests, close friends and family. We didn't want anything flashy, just something that felt like us. Is pretty close to his parents, and they've always been a big part of his life. His mom especially has a strong personality, always getting involved in every family decision. I don't have that same kind of closeness with my family. Things have always been a bit strained between us, but we keep it civil. So it wasn't too surprising when IM's mom wanted to get involved in our wedding planning. At first it seemed like she just wanted to help. She offered to cover the cost of the venue, which we thought was generous. Weddings are expensive, so having one less thing to worry about was great. Or at least, that's what we thought. Not long after she offered, Emil's mom started making little suggestions. She mentioned how it might be nice to invite a few of her business associates to the wedding. People we didn't even know. Emil and I brushed it off at first, thinking she was just trying to be helpful. We figured she'd drop it if we didn't make a big deal out of it. But then, without telling us, she went ahead and booked a different venue altogether. And not just any venue, a much fancier place than what we originally chosen. Our plan was for something cozy and laid back, but this new venue was all about grand halls, chandeliers, and marble floors. She told us she thought our first choice was too modest for such a special occasion. I felt like our plans were getting hijacked, but Emil just kept saying, "It's just how she is." She means, well, I tried to let it go, hoping it would all smooth out. But then the guest list became an issue. His mom sent over a list with about 30 extra names, most of which were people we had never met. Her colleagues, old friends, even some clients. It wasn't just an extra seat or two, it was almost doubling our guest list. I brought it up to Emil, and it turned into our first big argument about the wedding. He was caught between keeping the peace with his mom and respecting what we wanted for our own day. It got heated, and we ended up going to bed without really solving anything. A few days later, Im's dad stepped in, trying to play the mediator. He sat us down and talked about how important it is to keep the family united, especially during special events like weddings. I could tell he was just trying to help, but it felt like more pressure to give in to what his mom wanted. It wasn't about a wedding anymore. It was about making sure no one's feelings got hurt except maybe mine. That's when I reached out to my best friend. He's always been my go-to for advice, and he didn't hold back. He told me I needed to stand my ground before this whole thing spiraled out of control. "It's your wedding too," he said. Don't let her take over. His words made a lot of sense, but it was easier said than done, especially with Emil being caught in the middle. The situation took a turn when Emil's mom hit us with an ultimatum. She said that if we didn't include the people on her list, she wouldn't pay for the venue. It felt like a power play, and I was over it. I told Emil we should just forget about the money and go back to our original plan, the simple, intimate wedding we both wanted. Emil didn't know what to say. He was torn between supporting me and not wanting to disappoint his mom. It was like he was stuck between two worlds, and I could see the strain it was putting on him. The stress was starting to get to me. I didn't know how to deal with all of it. So I decided to post about our situation on Reddit. I figured if I laid it all out there, maybe people could give me some perspective, or at least tell me I wasn't being completely unreasonable. I didn't expect it to get my attention, but I just needed to vent. That's pretty much where things are right now. We're still trying to figure out what to do, and I'm hoping Emil can see why this is such a big deal for me. But honestly, I'm feeling pretty stuck. It's like every time I think we're getting closer to a solution, something else gets in the way, and with a wedding date creeping closer, I know we can't keep putting this off after I posted our situation on Reddit. It blew up way more than I expected. People from all over weigh in, offering their opinions and advice. Most of them sided with me, saying I wasn't being unreasonable for wanting to keep our wedding how we originally planned. They told me to hold my ground, not to let anyone take control of our big day. It felt like the internet had my back, even if real life felt a lot messier, but things got more complicated when my post found its way back to Emil's mom. I'm not sure how it happened, but I suspect one of her friends or a relative saw it and connected the dots. After the Reddit post reached Emil's mother, everything fell apart quickly. The phone call came late at night, and his voice was heavy with exhaustion. She's furious. He said his mother had read every word, and the situation exploded within the family. She felt humiliated, as if her generosity and intentions had been unfairly exposed, but what hurt her the most was that Emil hadn't fully taken her side, leaving her even more resentful and making him feel like he'd failed as a son. The atmosphere between us became suffocating. Emil was torn, growing more distant, trying to balance his mother's expectations with ours. I saw the confusion in his eyes and the hesitation in his voice. Whenever he talked about the wedding, he was trying to please everyone, but in the process, he was losing himself, and inevitably losing me too. As much as I tried to stay calm, the situation was draining me. What should have been a special moment had turned into a silent war of wills. Then, one Saturday morning, Emil's mother showed up at our place without warning. Impeccably dressed with a rigid posture, she walked in as if she owned the place. She sat on the couch and immediately began talking about how disappointed she was with everything. She didn't hold back, criticizing me for making a family matter public. Each word felt like a stab, and Emil sat silently beside her as if he weren't even there. "You're ruining everything," she said coldly, walking eyes with me, waiting for me to back down. Anger boiled inside me, but I held it in. I wanted to scream that this wedding was supposed to be about me and Emil, not about her, but instead, I stayed quiet, looking at Emil, silently begging him to stand up for me. He just lowered his head, unable to choose a side. In that moment, I knew something had irreversibly changed. I was on my own in this fight. After she left, the silence in the apartment was unbearable. I asked Emil directly if he really wanted to marry me, or if he was just going along with it out of inertia. He couldn't answer. He just stood there looking lost. That was the final blow. I got up, went to the bedroom, and started packing my things. I couldn't stay in this situation any longer, fighting a battle I shouldn't have to fight. As I packed, Emil finally tried to say something. "Please don't do this. We'll figure it out." But his voice was weak, as if even he didn't believe what he was saying. I paused for a moment, looking at him, and saw a man trapped between pleasing his mother and living his own life. But he didn't move. He didn't do anything to stop me from leaving, and that was all the confirmation I needed. I zipped up my bag, grabbed my keys, and walked out without saying another word. The sound of the door closing was both a relief and a heartbreak. I knew that from this moment on, there was no turning back. I called my best friend and told him what had happened. He listened quietly, and then with all the calm in the world said, "You did the right thing. No one deserves to start their life like that." In the following days, I received a few messages from Emil trying to talk, but I had already reached my breaking point. I deleted every message without replying. It didn't take long before I heard that his mother was spreading the story to the family, painting me as ungrateful and irresponsible for walking away from the wedding. But I didn't care. For the first time in months, I felt free. I started focusing on myself again. I picked up old hobbies, spent more time with friends, and slowly began to find myself. It wasn't easy, but it was liberating. Emil and I never spoke again. I heard from mutual friends that he eventually grew even more distant from his mother after I left, but by then it no longer mattered. My story with him was over what was supposed to be the start of a new life together, became the opportunity for me to rediscover myself. Maybe one day, Emil will realize what he lost, but by then, I'll be far too gone to care. In the months that followed, the weight of the breakup slowly gave way to a new sense of determination. I wasn't going to let that situation break me. More than that, I decided that if they thought they could walk over me and come out unscathed, they were deeply mistaken. The wound was still open, and the only way forward was through closure, a kind of closure that left no room for regrets. I started by reorganizing my life. I moved to a new city, found a new job, and gradually rebuilt my independence. At the same time, I kept quiet tabs on Ale and his family through mutual friends and social media. It didn't take long to hear that his mother was still spreading twisted stories about me, painting me as ungrateful and unstable, blaming me for ruining her son's relationship. Little did she know the game was far from over. Then I heard a rumor Emil was engaged to another woman named Sophie. They had met only a few months after I left. The news didn't hurt me as much as it motivated me. It was the spark I needed to carry out my plan for revenge. Sophie was young and insecure, clearly unaware of what she was walking into, and me, I had the information and the drive to turn their relationship into a disaster before it even began. I started small, sending Sophie anonymous messages, warning her to be cautious of her future mother-in-law. I was patient, planting little seeds of doubt over time, stories about how Emil's mother had tried to control our wedding and how she was already overstepping with Sophie's plans. It worked. Sophie began confronting Emil, and their argument started. They were subtle at first, just small disagreements, but I knew how to bide my time. Meanwhile, I created fake profiles to connect with Sophie's friends and colleagues, slowly leaking unsettling details about Emil's past. I revealed how he never stood up for me, how he let his mother meddle in every important decision. Each piece of information was a quiet ticking bomb, waiting for the perfect moment to explode. And then it did, as the wedding preparations reached their peak. Sophie started seeing the truth. The helpful mother-in-law she thought she had was now trying to control everything. Her argument with Emil intensified until 1 week before the wedding. Something happened that I hadn't expected. Sophie reached out to me directly. I got a message from her saying she needed to know the truth about Emil and what had happened between us. This was the final blow I had been waiting for. I agreed to meet with Sophie, not because I wanted anything from her, but because it was my chance to end this story on my terms when we met. Sophie looked nervous, as if she already knew what I was going to say. I held nothing back. I told her everything. Every manipulation from Emil's mother, every moment he stood by in silence, when I needed him the most. I explained that she was on the verge of living the same nightmare I had gone through. She listened in silence, and when I finished, I could see in her eyes that something had shifted. 3 days later, I heard the wedding was off. There wasn't a formal announcement, but the news spread quickly through AAL social circle. He tried to contact me one last time, but I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. Sophie moved on, and I knew she had escaped what could have been a lifetime of control and manipulation. As for Emil and his mother, I heard things between them deteriorated. Quickly, his mother never forgave him for losing 2 fiancées in a row, and he ended up cutting ties with her. It was ironic in a way. The woman who had fought so hard to control him now found herself alone, and the son she tried so desperately to protect had become a stranger to her. For me, it was the closure I needed. It wasn't about lost love or lingering anger anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity and showing that no one walks over me without consequences. Today, I look back without regret, not because of the revenge itself, but because I closed that chapter once and for all, and the best part, knowing that while they're trapped in their regrets and broken relationships, I'm free, ready to live life on my own terms. In the months that followed the cancellation of Sophie and Emil's wedding, I finally felt like I was rebuilding my life. The sense of freedom was like a breath of fresh air. The pain and frustration that once consumed me were now replaced by a quiet determination. I knew that not only had I escaped a toxic relationship, but I was also ready to give myself the chance to thrive. If life had given me a blank page, I was going to write a whole new story on it, with more time and energy. I decided to invest in an old dream, starting my own event planning business. I had always had a natural talent for organizing and creating unique experiences, and ironically, the chaos of my canceled wedding gave me the push I needed to pursue that career. I started small organizing events for friends and colleagues, and soon my reputation began to grow. At first it was tough. I had to learn about management, marketing, and finances from scratch, but I had never been more motivated. Every contract I secured felt like a personal victory, proof that I could build something on my own without relying on anyone. Within months, the business began to thrive. Referrals started pouring in, and suddenly my calendar was packed with weddings, parties, and corporate events. Each success was a reminder that I had made the right choice by walking away from Emil and his family. Meanwhile, I heard from mutual friends that things weren't going well for Emil and his mother. Their relationship had never recovered. Sophie had moved on, and from what I gathered, she was much better off without him. His mother, once a powerful and controlling figure, was now increasingly isolated. It seemed that all the control she tried to exert over her son's life had only succeeded in driving him further away. Then, something unexpected happened. One of my clients turned out to be a friend of Sophie's. During a meeting to discuss her event, I casually mentioned that I knew Emil. Her reaction was one of surprise, but instead of awkwardness, she smiled and said, "You dodged a bullet, and so did I." We laughed together, and in that moment I felt a deep sense of peace, as if all the pain and frustration from the past were finally behind me. Over time, my business grew so much that I started hiring staff. What began at a small personal project evolved into a thriving franchise. I opened offices in multiple cities, and my name became a go-to in the event planning industry. I was living a life I never imagined, with financial independence and a strong network of friends and colleagues who genuinely supported me. Then one day I received an unexpected email. It was from Emil. He apologized for everything and asked to meet and talk. I deleted the email without responding. There was nothing left to say. I had moved on, and the life I built was proof that I didn't need any explanation or apology from him. As the years went by, I started giving talks on overcoming adversity and entrepreneurship. People loved hearing how a tough situation could become the starting point for something incredible. I didn't hide my past. Instead, I turned it into a powerful lesson about the importance of prioritizing yourself and never settling for less than you deserve today. When I look back, I see that everything happened exactly as it should have. Not only did I escape a life that would have suffocated me, but I also built something extraordinary from the wreckage. Emil and his mother, they became nothing more than a footnote in the story of my life. While they were stuck in a cycle of regrets and poor choices, I was living fully, following my dreams and setting my own rules, and the best part, knowing that every one of my achievements is proof that the best revenge is success. Story 5. My family expects me to host every holiday, but it's becoming too much for me. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and for the past 5 years, I've been the one hosting every single holiday for my family. I'm talking Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter, even minor holidays like Memorial Day. If it's a chance for the family to gather, it's at my place. It wasn't always my job, but when my grandma passed, the role sort of fell to me. She hosted for over 30 years, and I guess everyone just expected me to pick up where she left off. See, I live alone in a house with a big living room and a dining area that's perfect for hosting. It's nothing fancy, but it's got enough space for everyone. My older brother, he's 35, lives nearby in a similar size place, but it's never been on the table for him to take over. It's always just been a given. That ID host, he has a wife and 2 young kids, and whenever the idea of hosting comes up, he just brushes it off, saying how his place is too chaotic for a big gathering. Over the years, the family has gotten bigger. There are cousins with their own kids, aunts and uncles, some of them getting older. A typical holiday means about 20 people in my house. It's loud. There are kids running around, and everyone's got their own expectations. They like the way I cook, how I set up the decorations, and how I make everything feel just like Grandma used to. I try to keep up with it all, bought new tablecloths, different lights for Christmas, and even those fancy serving dishes that I never use outside of these events. But hey, race to the cost. Keep adding up between the food, drinks, decorations, and little extras to keep the kids entertained. It's not cheap, and I'm the one paying for it all last year. I did the math, and I realized that I spent enough to cover a decent vacation for myself, something I haven't done in years, because every extra penny seems to go into these gatherings. Around this time last year, I finally got the courage to ask my family for a bit of help. Nothing crazy, just suggested that maybe everyone could chip in a little for the food or bring a side dish. I brought it up after dinner one night thinking it would be a casual conversation. Instead, the room went dead silent. Everyone just stared at me like I'd broken some unspoken rule. My mom quickly changed the subject. My brother made a joke about me being Mr. Moneybags, and that was it. Next thing I knew, I was still footing the bill while they brought store-bought desserts and called it a contribution. The last Thanksgiving was kind of my breaking point. The whole family was over eating and drinking and catching up while I was running around making sure the turkey didn't burn and the drink stayed filled the dishwasher, decided to quit halfway through the night, and by the time everyone left, I was stuck hand-washing dishes until nearly 2 a.m. Meanwhile, my family left early saying how tired they were without a second thought to the mess they left behind. I think that's when it hit me, how little time I actually get to enjoy these holidays myself. For my family, it's a chance to relax, to sit back and enjoy a home-cooked meal in a familiar place. But for me, it's become a full-time job. I wake up at the crack of dawn to start prepping, and by the time I'm finished cleaning up, it's like the day just vanished, and the pressure isn't just about the time and money, it's about the expectations. Every time I hint that maybe I won't host the next one, my mom just brushes it off with comments like, "But you're so good at it," or "It wouldn't be the same anywhere else." I even tried to bring it up gently at Christmas last year, saying something like, "Maybe it's time to pass the torch." My mom just looked at me and said, "Well, where else would we go?" My brother, of course, didn't jump in to offer his place. He just nodded along like he didn't have a stake in it. I couldn't help but feel a bit resentful. It's not like he doesn't have the space or the means to help out. He just doesn't want a hassle. And meanwhile, him left juggling credit card debt because I keep trying to make each holiday special. I've been putting off having a serious talk with them, mostly because I'm worried about how they'll react. My parents are very traditional, and I know they'd be disappointed if I stop hosting. They'd see it as me turning my back on the family legacy. But it's not just about the money or the work anymore. It's the fact that I feel taken for granted for years. Ava put up with it, telling myself that it's worth it to keep the family together. But lately I'm starting to wonder if it's really worth the toll it's taking on me. I used to love the holidays, but now I just dread them. I dread the planning, the cooking, the cleaning, and the feeling of being overlooked. It's not a good place to be, and I know that if I don't make a change soon, I'm going to end up resenting my family even more. So here I am, debating how to break the news to them that I need a break. I know it's going to cause drama. My family doesn't handle change well, but for the first time, I feel like I need to put myself first, even if it means rocking the boat. I just hope they understand, or at least try it before it's too late. So I decided to rip off the Band-Aid. I invited my parents and my brother over for brunch of my place. Figured it would be easier to explain everything in person without distractions. I went all out with the food, eggs, bacon fresh, fruit, the whole 9 yards. The mood was light when they arrived. My dad started talking about his golf game. My mom was asking about my neighbor's new dog, and my brother was busy scrolling through his phone while his kids played in the corner. It felt like a typical Sunday morning once everyone had eaten. I figured it was as good a time as any. I cleared my throat and told them that I needed to talk about the holidays this year. As soon as I brought it up, my mom's smile faded and my brother stopped scrolling. My dad kept eating, but I could see the curiosity in his eyes. I went straight into it, explaining that hosting was getting to be too much for me. I talked about the costs, how I've been putting everything on my credit card, and how I haven't really been able to enjoy the holidays myself for a few seconds. There was just silence. My dad finally broke it, waving his hand like he was brushing away a fly. He said something about how it wasn't a big deal and that the family could pitch in a little more this year, but he didn't really seem to get it. I tried to explain that it wasn't just the money. It was the time and effort, too. I reminded them about the dishwasher breaking last Thanksgiving, how I'd been stuck doing dishes while everyone else was relaxing. I could see my mom starting to frown, her face getting that pinched look she always gets when she doesn't like what she's hearing. My mom jumped in talking about how my grandmother had hosted every year without never complaining, how it kept the family close. She brought up memories of my grandma's old house, how it had always felt like home, and how she thought I'd been doing a great job continuing that tradition that afternoon. The guests started to arrive all cheerful and excited, as if it was just another year where they'd celebrate. At my expense, my parents were the first to show up as my mom walked in. She looked around and said, "Strange, you didn't decorate." My dad, oblivious to the attention in the air, went straight to the couch, as he always did. Shortly after, my brother arrived with his wife and kids complaining about the traffic, then dumped their coats on the armchair without a second thought. As everyone settled in, they began asking about dinner. I casually told them things would be different this year, and I hadn't prepared the usual feast. My mom's smile disappeared instantly. "What do you mean you always cook for Thanksgiving?" she exclaimed. I calmly responded, "This year, it's up to you guys. If you want to eat, you'll need to order takeout or bring something." For a moment, there was an awkward silence. Everyone stared at me, expecting me to say I was joking. I wasn't. My brother chuckled, thinking I was pulling a prank, but when he realized I was serious, his expression turned sour. "You gotta be kidding me. We brought the kids all the way here and you didn't even cook a turkey." I shrugged. "I told you during brunch that this was getting to be too much for me, but it seems like no one took it seriously." The tension grew thicker. My mom, trying to keep her composure, responded in a passive-aggressive tone. "This isn't how you treat your family. Your grandmother never let us go hungry." I sighed, replying firmly, "My grandmother didn't do this alone for 30 years. Everyone helped, even just a little. None of you have ever bothered to pitch in." My brother folded his arms and sneered, "Oh, here we go. See, the drama." His wife shook her head in annoyance and muttered something under her breath. Meanwhile, the kids started whining about being hungry, and my sister-in-law snapped, "This is ridiculous. The kids were looking forward to this for weeks." I looked her in the eye and calmly said, "And I've been waiting for help for years." The response was immediate. My dad, visibly irritated, muttered, "If I knew you were going to pull this stunt, I'd have gone to play golf." My mom's face turned red with anger, and she started lecturing me about how I was ruining the family tradition. But this time, I didn't hold back. "You only care about this tradition because you don't have to do the work. I've spent more than I can afford to keep this going, and the only thing I asked for was a little help. What did I get? Silence, jokes, and more bills." At that point, my brother's wife, unable to hide her frustration, grabbed the kids and said, "Let's go. This is a waste of time." My brother, following her lead, got up and gave me a disdainful look. "Good luck with Christmas," he said sarcastically before slamming the door behind him. With them gone, only my parents remained. My mom stared at me as if she couldn't believe her son would break the family's expectations like this. "This is betrayal," she whispered. I took a deep breath and replied, "No, Mom. Betrayal is making me carry a burden that should have been shared by everyone." My dad, clearly out of patience, added, "If you don't want to be part of this family, just say so." His words stung more than I expected, but I knew I had to stand my ground. "It's not that I don't want to be part of the family, it's that for once I want to take care of myself." They stood up and left, leaving the door wide open behind them, as if expecting me to run after them. I didn't. I simply closed the door, feeling a strange sense of relief wash over me. The days that followed were eerily quiet. No calls, no texts, just silence. I knew they were waiting for me, to apologize, to backtrack, and take on the hosting role again. But this time, I wasn't going to give in. Christmas came and went, and for the first time in years, I had no obligations. I spent the holiday alone with a simple dinner and a marathon of movies. No screaming children, no dishes to wash, no accumulating debt, just peace. A few months later, I heard that my brother tried to host Easter at his place. It didn't go as planned. Nobody showed up prepared, and without enough food, guests left early grumbling. He learned the hard way what it felt like to shoulder everything alone. And of course, my mom blamed me for the decline of the family, as if it was all my fault. Still, I stood my ground. I made it clear that if they wanted to keep the tradition alive, they'd have to do it without me. It wasn't my problem anymore. I had finally chosen to live for myself, and despite their anger, I never felt freer. The irony with the money I saved. I finally took that vacation I'd been postponing for years. As I watched the sunset on a distant beach, without a single worry in the world, I realized the greatest gift I'd given myself was freedom. Months after breaking free from the family tradition, the peace I found was priceless. No more kids screaming, no more stress from hosting parties for an ungrateful crowd, and most importantly, no more financial pressure. I finally had the space to breathe. I began focusing on myself. I got back in old hobbies, started going to the gym, and even took a cooking class. But this Time, just for me. Meanwhile, things weren't going so smoothly for my family. Without the gatherings of my house, everything fell apart. My brother tried to host events to keep up appearances, but nothing went as planned. During Easter, guests showed up unprepared and the food ran out early. They left complaining about the lack of organization. Christmas was even worse. He planned a last-minute barbecue in his garage, but only half the family showed up, and those who did kept whispering about how much better things had been when I was in charge. My mom was furious with my brother, and the tension between them escalated. She started calling him lazy and selfish, ironically ignoring the fact that she had treated me the same way for years. My dad, fed up with the chaos, spent more time at the golf course, leaving my mom to stew in her frustration. The cherished family atmosphere they clung to so desperately began to unravel. I stayed far removed from the drama. I didn't respond to my mom's passive-aggressive messages or my brother's attempts to pin the blame on me for abandoning the family. I simply moved on with no holiday stress weighing me down. I started traveling more. The money that once went toward extravagant dinners now funded experiences I'd always dreamed of. I spent a month in Europe exploring cities I had always wanted to visit, meeting new people along the way. At one point, I heard through a cousin that my mom had tried to stage a family intervention to bring me back. They even dragged in a distant uncle to persuade me to resume hosting. I found out about this while sitting on a beach, sipping a cold drink as the sun set over the ocean. The thought of trading my new, found peace for the chaos I had left behind seemed so absurd that I laughed out loud. They never understood that it wasn't just about a party, it was about respect, something they had never given me gradually. The family dynamic shifted for good. My mom and brother stopped speaking for a while, each blaming the other for the collapse of the family traditions. My brother's wife eventually filed for divorce, leaving him with 2 young kids to raise on his own. Suddenly he was juggling responsibilities he had once dumped on me, and no one showed up to help him. My dad, who always preferred to avoid conflict rather than solve it, drifted even further away, only deepening the resentment between them. My mom occasionally tried to reconnect with me, but every conversation ended the same way. "Why can't you at least host Christmas for us?" Every time she brought it up, I smiled and said, "I hosted enough. It's your turn now." It became clear that I wasn't coming back, and they resented me for it. They kept trying to pin the family problems on me, but it no longer affected me. I had found something I'd never had in all those years. Freedom. I no longer had anything to prove, and the guilt they tried to push on me had no power. There were no more debts from holiday extravagance, no more feeling used by people who didn't truly care about me. The last time I saw my family was at a distant cousin's wedding. They were there scattered in small groups, avoiding each other. My brother looked exhausted, my mom bitter and worn out. When they saw me, they avoided eye contact. No words were necessary. We all knew I was at peace, while they remained trapped in the same toxic cycle. In that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. Sometimes putting yourself first is seen as selfish, but for me it was survival. Learning to say no was the most valuable lesson I took from this experience, and I had no room left in my life for guilt or regret. Nowadays, I spend my holidays in simple, meaningful ways, sometimes traveling, sometimes just enjoying a quiet day at home with a good book. The only tradition I maintain is the one where I take care of myself, and honestly, that's the only tradition that matters. Have they learned anything from all this? I don't know, and frankly I don't care. After years of sacrificing myself for others, I finally found peace, and that's a victory no one can take away from me.